Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the observation window of the research station, watching the crimson sunrise paint the alien landscape in shades of rust and gold. Mars had been humanity's second home for 3 decades now, but the sight still took her breath away. The thin atmosphere created sunrises unlike anything on Earth, and after 6 months at the remote geological survey station, she had learned to appreciate these quiet moments before the day's work began. The coffee maker gurgled behind her, filling the small habitat module with the familiar aroma that reminded her of home. She was alone at Station Echo 7, the most isolated outpost in the Northern Hemisphere, conducting deep core analysis of mineral deposits that might hold the key to terraforming efforts. It was lonely work, but Sarah preferred the solitude to the crowded dome cities where most colonists lived. A soft chime from her workstation interrupted her morning ritual. The seismic sensors had detected something unusual during the night, a series of micro-tremors about 2 kilometers northeast of the station. Sarah frowned as she reviewed the data. The pattern was unlike anything in her geological database, too regular to be natural tectonic activity, but too subtle to be mining operations. She suited up in her environmental gear, a routine that had become second nature after years of fieldwork. The Mars suit was bulky but necessary, protecting her from the thin atmosphere and temperature extremes that could kill an unprotected human in minutes. The helmet's heads-up display showed external conditions, minus 42 degrees Celsius, atmospheric pressure barely registering, wind speed 15 kilometers per hour from the southwest. The rover hummed quietly as Sarah navigated across the rocky terrain toward the source of the seismic activity. Red dust swirled around the vehicle's reinforced wheels, and she had to slow down several times to navigate around larger boulder formations. The landscape here was ancient, shaped by billions of years of wind erosion and impact events that had left their mark in twisted rock formations and crater-pocked valleys. As she approached the coordinates, Sarah noticed something that made her pulse quicken. A metallic glint caught the morning sun, partially buried beneath a recent rock slide. She parked the rover and activated the external cameras for a better look. What she saw defied immediate explanation. A curved surface that definitely wasn't natural, made from some kind of material that seemed to shift color in the light. Sarah approached cautiously, her geological training warring with growing excitement. First contact protocols existed, but they were theoretical exercises that assumed any alien encounter would happen in space or in the major colonies. No one had prepared her for finding something like this during a routine survey mission. The object was small, roughly the size of a personal transport pod, but its design was unlike anything in human technology. The surface appeared to be seamless, with no visible joints or construction marks. Strange symbols were etched along what might have been a hull, glowing faintly with internal light. The rock slide had damaged one section, creating an opening that revealed a dim interior. Her suit's radiation detectors remained silent, showing no dangerous emissions from the craft. Sarah activated her helmet recorder and began documenting everything, knowing that whatever she had found would change human understanding of their place in the universe. The implications were staggering. Proof that Earth wasn't alone, that other species had developed space travel, that they had visited Mars. A faint sound through her helmet's audio pickups made her freeze. It was barely perceptible, a rhythmic pattern that sounded almost like breathing. Sarah's heart hammered as she realized the craft might not be empty. Someone or something could still be alive inside. Protocol demanded that she return to the station and report her findings to Colonial Command. But the weak sound suggested that any occupant might not survive the time it would take for a proper first contact team to arrive. Sarah had trained as a paramedic before becoming a geologist, and her medical instincts overrode bureaucratic procedures. She approached the damaged opening and shined her helmet light inside. The interior was filled with a breathable atmosphere. Her suit's sensors indicated, though the composition was unlike Earth's air. Soft bioluminescent panels provided gentle illumination, revealing a cockpit designed for a much smaller occupant than a human. In what appeared to be a pilot's seat, Sarah saw the most remarkable thing in human history. A tiny figure, no larger than her hand, lay unconscious against restraint webbing that had probably saved its life during whatever impact had damaged the craft. The being was humanoid in basic structure but clearly not human. Its skin had a faint bluish tint and delicate features that seemed almost elvish. Gossamer wings, torn and damaged, suggested it might normally be capable of flight, The creature's chest rose and fell in shallow, rapid breaths that suggested severe distress. Sarah's medical training kicked in as she noticed what appeared to be a head injury, a dark discoloration along one side of the tiny skull. Without immediate care, the being would likely die. Sarah made a decision that would change her life forever. She carefully reached into the craft and gently extracted the unconscious alien, cradling it in her gloved hands like a wounded bird. The being was incredibly light, weighing almost nothing, and she could feel the rapid flutter of its heartbeat through her suit's tactile feedback systems. Back at the rover, Sarah faced a dilemma. Her environmental suit wasn't designed to provide life support for alien physiology, but the being clearly needed medical attention that only she could provide. The research station had a small medical bay with equipment that might help, but first she had to get there safely with her tiny passenger. She created a makeshift carrier from a sample container, padding it with insulation material, and connecting it to her suit's life support system to provide a stable environment. The alien stirred slightly as she settled it into the improvised carrier, and for a moment Sarah thought she saw its eyes flutter open, large, luminous orbs that seemed to hold intelligence and perhaps even gratitude before unconsciousness claimed it again. The return journey to Station Echo 7 felt like the longest drive of Sarah's life. Every bump and vibration made her worry about her fragile passenger, and she found herself talking to the unconscious being, promising that everything would be all right, that she would do everything possible to help. She had no idea if it could understand her words, but something about the gesture felt important. As the research station came into view, Sarah realized that her quiet life of geological surveys and peaceful solitude was over. She was now responsible for the first alien life form ever encountered by humanity, and the decision she made in the next few hours would echo through history. The weight of that responsibility was almost overwhelming, but looking down at the tiny, vulnerable creature in her care, Sarah knew she had made the right choice. The future had just become infinitely more complex and wonderful. Inside Station Echo 7's medical bay, Sarah worked with steady hands despite the magnitude of what she was attempting. The alien lay on a makeshift examination table she had created by padding a sample tray with sterile cloth. Under the bright medical lights, she could see the creature more clearly than ever before. The being was exquisitely formed, standing perhaps 12 centimeters tall when upright. Its skin had an opalescent quality that shifted between pale blue and silver, depending on the angle of light. The facial features were delicate and symmetrical, with high cheekbones and a narrow chin that gave it an almost ethereal appearance. The damaged wings were translucent, with intricate vein patterns that reminded Sarah of butterfly wings or autumn leaves. Most concerning was the head injury. A dark bruise spread across the left side of the alien's skull, and Sarah's medical scanner indicated possible intracranial pressure. She had treated similar injuries in humans, but she had no idea how this being's physiology might differ. The scanner showed what appeared to be a circulatory system, though the readings were unlike anything in human medical databases. The alien's breathing was shallow but regular, and its body temperature seemed stable at about 34 degrees Celsius. Sarah carefully cleaned the wound with sterile saline, noting that the being's blood was a deep purple color that seemed to shimmer with its own internal light. When she applied gentle pressure to stop the bleeding, the creature stirred slightly, making a soft sound that was almost musical. "Easy there, little one," Sarah whispered, though she doubted the alien could understand her. "I'm trying to help you." To her amazement, the creature's eyes fluttered open. They were large and luminous, a deep violet color that seemed to hold depths of intelligence and emotion. The alien looked directly at Sarah, and she felt a strange sensation, as if something was touching the edges of her thoughts. The feeling was gentle but unmistakable. Images and emotions that weren't her own began to flow through her mind. She saw flashes of the alien's memories, soaring through vast crystalline caverns, cities of incredible beauty carved from living stone, and others of its kind moving through the air like living jewels. But there were darker images too. Ships in the void, explosions, desperate flight through space, and the terror of crash landing on an unknown world. Sarah gasped and pulled back, the mental connection breaking. The alien's eyes remained fixed on her, and she realized that what she had experienced was some form of telepathic communication. The being was trying to tell her something, sharing its story through direct mental contact. "You're telepathic," Sarah said softly. You can share thoughts and memories. The alien made another musical sound, this one seeming to convey agreement. It attempted to sit up but winced in pain, one tiny hand moving to its injured head. Sarah gently helped it lean against a rolled towel, creating a backrest proportionate to its size. Working carefully, Sarah used the medical bay's equipment to create what she hoped would be helpful treatment. She prepared a solution of glucose and electrolytes in proportions that her scanner suggested might be compatible with the alien's biochemistry. Using the finest needle available, she created an IV setup scaled down to the being's tiny physiology. The procedure required tremendous precision, and Sarah found herself holding her breath as she inserted the needle into what appeared to be a major blood vessel in the creature's arm. The alien watched her work with those enormous eyes, and Sarah felt another gentle mental touch, this time conveying trust and gratitude. "What's your name?" Sarah asked, though she knew the being probably couldn't understand spoken language. "Where did you come from?" The response came as another flood of images and sensations. Sarah saw a world unlike anything she had ever imagined. A planet where massive trees grew kilometers tall, their canopies supporting entire cities. The aliens' people lived in harmony with these living structures, their small size allowing them to navigate spaces between leaves and branches that would be impossible for larger beings. She learned that the alien's name translated roughly to Zephyr in human terms, a word that meant both wind and hope in its language. Zephyr's people were called the Selathi, and they were ancient beyond human comprehension, having developed civilization when Earth was still dominated by primitive life forms. The mental sharing was exhausting for both of them, and Sarah noticed that Zephyr's color was becoming more pale. She adjusted the IV flow and used the medical scanner to monitor vital signs. The readings were stabilizing, but it was clear that the tiny being needed rest to recover from its injuries. Sarah created a more comfortable environment by adjusting the temperature and humidity in the medical bay to match what she had sensed from Zephyr's memories of home. She fabricated a small sleeping area from soft materials, creating what was essentially a doll's bed but with full life support monitoring. As Zephyr rested, Sarah faced the enormity of her situation. She was harboring the first known alien life form in human history, and she had no idea what the implications might be. Colonial Command had strict protocols about first contact situations, but those protocols assumed encounters would happen through official channels with proper diplomatic and scientific support. Her communication array could reach Mars control within hours, but Sarah hesitated to make that call. She had seen enough of bureaucratic responses to know that Zephyr would likely become a laboratory specimen, studied and prodded by teams of scientists who might not prioritize the being's well-being over their research goals. The ethical implications weighed heavily on her mind. Zephyr was clearly intelligent and sentient, capable of complex thought and emotion. Did she have the right to make decisions about its fate? But she also couldn't ignore the fact that without her intervention, the alien would have died alone in the wreckage of its ship. Over the next several hours, Sarah divided her time between monitoring Zephyr's condition and trying to learn more about the crashed vessel. She took the rover back to the crash site and carefully documented everything, collecting samples of the ship's material for analysis. The technology was far beyond human understanding. The hull seemed to be composed of a smart material that could repair itself, and the power source was unlike anything in human science. Most intriguingly, she found what appeared to be a navigation system still partially functional. The displays showed star maps that included Sol system, but also dozens of other systems she didn't recognize. Zephyr's people weren't just spacefaring. They were part of a vast galactic community that humanity had never suspected existed. When Sarah returned to the station, she found Zephyr awake and sitting up in the improvised bed. The alien's color had improved significantly, and the head injury seemed to be healing with remarkable speed. When their eyes met, Sarah felt another gentle mental touch, this one conveying curiosity about her own thoughts and experiences. "You want to know about humans?" Sarah said. "About Earth." What followed was an unprecedented exchange of knowledge. Sarah shared her memories of Earth, blue skies and green forests, oceans teeming with life, and the story of humanity's expansion to Mars. Zephyr seemed fascinated by human technology and culture, particularly their music and art. In return, Zephyr showed Sarah glimpses of the greater galaxy. There were hundreds of intelligent species, forming a loose confederation that had existed for millennia. Some were warriors, others were scholars, and still others were traders who moved between worlds. The Salathi served as messengers and diplomats, their small size and telepathic abilities making them ideal for delicate negotiations. But there was danger in the galaxy too. A species known only as the Devourers had been expanding aggressively, consuming entire worlds and leaving nothing behind but dead space. Zephyr had been fleeing from them when its ship was damaged in an encounter with their scouts, leading to the crash landing on Mars. As night fell over the Martian landscape, Sarah realized that her decision to save one tiny alien had connected humanity to something far larger than she had ever imagined. The galaxy was vast and filled with wonders and terrors in equal measure, and somehow, she had become the first human ambassador to this cosmic community. The weight of responsibility was staggering, but looking at Zephyr's trusting face, Sarah knew that whatever came next, she would face it with the knowledge that she had done the right thing. The future of human-alien relations had begun with a simple act of compassion, and that gave her hope for what was to come. 3 days had passed since Sarah found Zephyr, and the tiny Salathi had made remarkable progress in healing. The head injury was now barely visible, and Zephyr's natural luminescence had returned to full brightness. More importantly, their telepathic communication had deepened, allowing for complex exchanges of ideas and emotions that transcended the barriers of language. Sarah had learned that Zephyr was not just any Salathi, but a member of the Harmony Council, the governing body that oversaw diplomatic relations between species in their sector of the galaxy. Zephyr had been carrying crucial intelligence about Devourer movements when its ship was attacked, and this information could mean the difference between survival and extinction for countless worlds. The morning brought an unexpected complication. Sarah's routine check of the communication array revealed multiple incoming signals from Mars Control. Her weekly status reports were overdue, and Colonial Command was beginning to ask questions about her silence. The automated systems at Station Echo 7 had also logged the seismic activity from the crash site, and a survey team was being dispatched to investigate. "They'll be here in 2 days," Sarah told Zephyr, who was perched on her workstation, tiny hands manipulating a human tablet with surprising dexterity. The alien had shown remarkable adaptability to human technology, quickly learning to navigate digital interfaces despite the size difference. Zephyr's response came as a wave of concern mixed with determination. Through their mental link, Sarah felt the alien's worry about being discovered by human authorities, but also a fierce resolve to complete its mission. The intelligence Zephyr carried was too important to be lost to bureaucratic delays or scientific curiosity. The Salathi shared a new set of memories, showing Sarah the devastation the Devourers had left in their wake. Entire star systems stripped bare, their planets reduced to lifeless husks. Billions of sentient beings consumed to feed the Devourers' endless hunger for resources and energy. The images were horrifying, and Sarah understood why Zephyr was so desperate to deliver its warning. "You need to contact your people," Sarah said. "Can your ship's communication system be repaired?" Zephyr's response was a mixture of hope and frustration. The ship's quantum communicator was functional, but required a specific rare element to boost its signal across interstellar distances. The element, which Zephyr's thoughts translated as void silver, was found naturally on very few worlds, and Mars wasn't one of them. Sarah spent the morning reviewing every geological survey in the station's database, searching for anything that might match the properties Zephyr described. Void silver was apparently a superconductor that remained stable even in the vacuum of space, with unique quantum properties that made faster-than-light communication possible. The breakthrough came when Sarah remembered the asteroid mining operations in Mars orbit. Several companies were harvesting rare metals from the asteroid belt, and their shipments often passed through the orbital transfer station. If void silver existed anywhere in the Sol system, that's where it would be found. The challenge was obtaining it without revealing why she needed it. Sarah crafted a carefully worded request to the orbital station, claiming she needed exotic materials for a classified geological experiment. Her reputation as a respected researcher and the isolation of her posting worked in her favor. The request was approved without too many questions. While they waited for the shipment, Sarah and Zephyr worked on repairing the alien ship. The vessel's self-repair systems were extraordinary, requiring only guidance and occasional material input to restore damaged sections. Sarah provided tools and materials from the station's fabrication unit, while Zephyr directed the repairs with the precision of someone who understood every component intimately. The work gave them time to share more of their respective cultures. Sarah learned that the Salathi were an ancient race, perhaps the oldest still active species in the galaxy. They had achieved a level of harmony between technology and nature that humans were only beginning to understand. Their cities were living ecosystems. Their transportation systems used natural forces like wind and magnetic fields, and their society valued wisdom and cooperation above individual achievement. In return, Sarah shared human history and culture, focusing on humanity's greatest achievements and most noble aspirations. She showed Zephyr recordings of human music, from classical symphonies to folk songs, and was amazed to discover that the Salathi had their own musical traditions, based on harmonic frequencies that could literally shape matter at the molecular level. Zephyr demonstrated this ability by singing a haunting melody that caused the repair materials to flow like liquid, perfectly filling gaps in the ship's hull. The song was beautiful beyond description, touching something deep in Sarah's soul and leaving her with tears streaming down her face. "Your people, they could teach us so much," Sarah said, overwhelmed by the implications of what she had witnessed. Zephyr's response carried both hope and caution. The Galactic Confederation had protocols for integrating new species, but the process was slow and careful. Too many civilizations had been destroyed by rapid cultural change or technological advancement they weren't ready to handle. Humanity would need to prove its wisdom and maturity before being fully accepted into the galactic community. The arrival of the supply drone interrupted their work. Sarah retrieved the shipment and found, among the various rare elements, a small vial of metallic crystals that made Zephyr practically vibrate with excitement. The void silver was exactly what they needed, though Sarah suspected the orbital miners had no idea what they had actually found. Installation of the communication boost took most of the afternoon. The void silver had to be integrated into the ship's quantum matrix using techniques that seemed more like art than science. Zephyr worked with intense concentration, its tiny hands moving in precise patterns while humming frequencies that made the alien metal resonate in harmony with the ship's systems. When the work was complete, Zephyr activated the communicator. Sarah watched in fascination as holographic displays materialized around the cockpit, showing star maps and communication channels that spanned thousands of light years. The technology was so advanced that it seemed like magic. Yet Zephyr operated it with the casual ease of someone checking their email. The first response came within minutes, a cascade of alien symbols and sounds that Zephyr's expression indicated was equivalent to an urgent priority message. Through their mental link, Sarah felt Zephyr's relief at re-establishing contact with the Harmony Council, but also growing alarm at what was being communicated. The situation was worse than Zephyr had feared. The Devourers had accelerated their expansion, consuming 3 more systems while Zephyr was missing. Several member species of the Confederation were in full retreat, abandoning their outer colonies to consolidate their defenses around core worlds. The intelligence Zephyr carried about Devourer movement patterns was now more crucial than ever. But there was also unexpected news. The Harmony Council had been monitoring human space activities and were impressed by humanity's rapid technological advancement and expansion. There was growing sentiment among some council members that humans might be valuable allies in the coming war against the Devourers, despite their relative technological primitiveness. "They want to meet with human representatives," Sarah said, interpreting the flood of information Zephyr was sharing. "This could be the formal first contact that changes everything." Zephyr's response carried both excitement and concern. The council was willing to establish preliminary contact, but they needed assurance that humanity could be trusted with the knowledge of the greater galaxy. Too many species had used such knowledge for conquest rather than cooperation. Sarah felt the weight of representing her entire species in this moment. Her next words could determine whether humanity joined the galactic community as equals, or remained isolated in their small corner of space while cosmic events unfolded around them. "What would they need to see?" Sarah asked. "What would prove to them that humans are worthy partners?" Zephyr's answer came as a complex set of images and concepts that took Sarah several minutes to fully understand. The Council would need to see evidence of human wisdom, compassion, and ability to put the greater good above individual or species interests. They would need to see that humans could work with beings very different from themselves, that they could be trusted with advanced technology, and that they would fight to protect innocent life rather than merely pursuing their own advantage. As evening fell over Mars, Sarah realized that her actions over the past 3 days had already begun that proof. She had risked her career and possibly her freedom to save a being that could have been anything: enemy, neutral party, or something beyond her understanding. She had acted from compassion rather than calculation, and that choice had opened a door to the stars. Tomorrow would bring the arrival of the Colonial Command survey team, and Sarah would have to make perhaps the most important decision in human history. She could turn Zephyr over to the authorities and let bureaucrats and politicians handle first contact, or she could trust in the bond she had formed with this remarkable being and take the first steps toward a larger destiny for humanity. The Colonial Command survey team arrived exactly on schedule, their transport kicking up clouds of red dust as it settled near Station Echo 7. Sarah watched from her habitat window as 4 figures in environmental suits approached the station, their movements purposeful and official. She had spent the night preparing for this moment, but her heart still raced as she considered the magnitude of what she was about to do. Zephyr was hidden in the station's secondary laboratory, along with the carefully documented evidence of their encounter. The alien ship had been moved to a concealed location behind a rock formation, camouflaged using techniques Zephyr had shared from Silathi stealth technology. To any casual observer, it would appear to be just another boulder in the Martian landscape. "Dr. Chen, we need to discuss some irregularities in your reports," said Commander Torres as soon as the team entered the station. She was a stern woman, with graying hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to absolute authority. "Your seismic readings from 3 days ago don't match our satellite data, and you've been uncharacteristically silent on your communication channels." Sarah had rehearsed this moment, but facing the reality of lying to Colonial Command made her mouth dry. "I've been dealing with equipment malfunctions," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "The seismic event was a minor rockslide, probably caused by thermal expansion. I've been so focused on repairs that I neglected my routine reports." The commander's expression suggested skepticism, but before she could respond, one of her team members called out from the communications console, "Ma'am, you need to see this. Dr. Chen's been using massive amounts of power for something, and there are some unusual energy signatures in the geological scanner logs." Sarah's stomach dropped, but she maintained her composure. "I've been running deep analysis protocols on some unusual mineral samples. The power consumption is within normal parameters for extended research operations." What followed was the most stressful 4 hours of Sarah's life. The survey team methodically examined every system in the station, reviewed all her logs, and questioned her about every unusual reading or anomaly. Sarah deflected as best she could, offering plausible explanations for each inconsistency, but she could feel their suspicion growing. The real test came when Commander Torres announced that they would be conducting a full survey of the area around the station. "We need to verify your seismic readings and make sure there are no safety hazards that might affect future operations," she explained, though her tone suggested she was looking for something specific. As the team prepared to leave for their survey, Sarah felt a gentle mental touch from Zephyr. The alien was sharing a complex plan that would require precise timing and enormous trust. Through their telepathic link, Zephyr conveyed that the Harmony Council had been monitoring the situation and was prepared to intervene if necessary, but they preferred that first contact happen on humanity's terms, rather than through forced revelation. The survey team spent most of the day examining the crash site and surrounding area. Sarah accompanied them, her heart in her throat every time they approached the concealed ship. Zephyr's camouflage held perfectly, but she knew that detailed scans would eventually reveal the anomaly. As the afternoon wore on, Commander Torres grew increasingly frustrated. "There's definitely something here that doesn't match your reports, Dr. Chen. The mineral composition of this rockslide is unlike anything else in the area, and our magnetic resonance scans are picking up metallic structures that shouldn't exist." Sarah knew the moment of truth was approaching. In just a few more hours, the team would discover Zephyr's ship, and the opportunity for controlled first contact would be lost. She made her decision with a clarity that surprised her. "Commander, I need to show you something," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the enormity of what she was about to do. "But first, I need your word that you'll listen to everything I have to say before making any decisions." Torres studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You have my attention, Doctor." Sarah led the team back to the station and activated the main display screen. What appeared was a carefully prepared presentation that included her recordings of Zephyr's ship, medical scans of the alien, and selected portions of their telepathic communications. She had spent hours organizing the information to present humanity's first contact with alien intelligence in the most positive light possible. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Two of the team members reached for their weapons before Torres ordered them to stand down. The commander herself went pale, staring at the images of Zephyr with a mixture of awe and terror. This is impossible," whispered Dr. Martinez, the team's xenobiologist. "We're looking at proof of extraterrestrial intelligence. Do you have any idea what this means?" Sarah continued her presentation, showing the evidence of Zephyr's advanced medical recovery, their successful communication, and most importantly, the intelligence about the galactic threat posed by the Devourers. She emphasized Zephyr's peaceful intentions and the opportunity this represented for humanity to join a larger community of intelligent species. "Where is it now?" Torres demanded, her training warring with the implications of what she was seeing. "Close," Sarah said carefully, "and willing to meet with you if you approach with peaceful intentions." What followed was a tense negotiation that would have been impossible without Zephyr's telepathic abilities. The alien remained hidden but mentally connected to Sarah, helping her navigate the complex diplomatic and security concerns of the Colonial Command Team. Through Sarah, Zephyr was able to provide real-time verification of its claims by sharing detailed star maps and scientific data that would take human astronomers years to verify independently. The breakthrough came when Zephyr demonstrated its ship's technology by briefly uncloaking it during the team's return survey. The vessel appeared like a mirage in the desert, its crystalline surface reflecting the Martian sunset in impossible colors before vanishing again. The display of advanced technology that could hide in plain sight was enough to convince even the most skeptical team member that they were dealing with something far beyond human capabilities. "Commander," Torres made the call that would change human history. Instead of immediately contacting Earth Command with news of the discovery, she agreed to allow Sarah to facilitate a proper first contact meeting. The decision was partly practical. The alien clearly possessed technology that could make concealment impossible if it chose to reveal itself, but also reflected a growing understanding that humanity was being offered an unprecedented opportunity. The meeting took place in the station's main laboratory, with Zephyr appearing in its full diminutive glory, while the human team watched in stunned silence. The alien's natural bioluminescence filled the room with gentle light, and its telepathic projection allowed everyone present to feel its peaceful intentions directly. Through Sarah's translation, Zephyr formally introduced itself as a representative of the Harmony Council and extended an invitation for preliminary diplomatic contact between humanity and the Galactic Confederation. The alien explained the threat posed by the Devourers and the urgent need for all peaceful species to cooperate in their own defense. Dr. Martinez asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Why us? Humans are barely capable of interplanetary travel. What could we possibly offer in a galactic war? Zephyr's response, conveyed through Sarah, was both humbling and inspiring. You saved me when you had no obligation to do so, when helping me could have brought you nothing but trouble. Dr. Chen risked her career and her freedom to preserve the life of a being she had never seen before. This is the quality the Confederation needs most, the willingness to help others even at personal cost. The alien continued, sharing that humanity's rapid technological advancement and adaptability were also valued traits, but that it was their capacity for compassion and sacrifice that made them potentially valuable allies. The Devourers were a hive mind that understood only consumption and domination. Fighting them required species that could think creatively, act independently, and most importantly, value the lives of others above their own survival. As the day ended, Commander Torres faced a decision that would echo through history. She could follow standard protocols and turn the situation over to Earth Command, or she could trust in the extraordinary circumstances and allow humanity's first diplomatic contact with alien intelligence to proceed through unconventional channels. The weight of representing humanity in this moment was shared among all of them, but it was Sarah who had started this chain of events with a simple act of kindness. Looking at Zephyr, still recovering from injuries sustained while fleeing cosmic horrors, she knew that her choice to help had already proven humanity worthy of the trust being placed in them. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time in human history, it included the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe, and that their capacity for compassion might be their greatest strength in the challenges to come. 2 weeks after first contact, Station Echo 7 had become the most important location in human space. What had once been Sarah's quiet research outpost was now a bustling hub of activity, with temporary structures housing diplomats, scientists, and military advisors from across the solar system. The transformation was both exciting and overwhelming. Sarah stood in the newly constructed conference room, watching as representatives from Earth's major governments prepared for humanity's first formal diplomatic session with an alien intelligence. The setting was deliberately chosen to be as non-threatening as possible. Comfortable furniture scaled to human proportions, warm lighting, and displays showing Earth's most beautiful natural scenes. Zephyr had spent the past week meeting with various human delegations, always with Sarah serving as primary interpreter and cultural liaison. The role had thrust her into the center of galactic diplomacy, something her geological training had never prepared her for. Yet the bond she had formed with Zephyr made her uniquely qualified to bridge the gap between species. The Salathi had proven remarkably adaptable to human customs, learning to communicate through both telepathic projection and a sophisticated translation device that converted thoughts into spoken language. Zephyr's natural curiosity about human culture had led to fascinating exchanges about art, music, philosophy, and science that often lasted deep into the Martian night. Today's meeting was crucial. The Harmony Council had agreed to consider formal, diplomatic relations with humanity. But first, they needed assurance that humans could be trusted with the knowledge and technology that came with galactic citizenship. A test had been proposed, one that would demonstrate humanity's character under pressure. "The situation is deteriorating faster than we anticipated," Zephyr explained to the assembled delegates, its translated voice carrying undertones of urgency that the technology couldn't fully convey. 3 more star systems have fallen to the Devourers in the past week. The Confederation is being forced to abandon the Outer Rim territories and consolidate defenses around core worlds. Ambassador Park from Earth's United Nations asked the question everyone was thinking. "What exactly are you asking of us? Our technology is primitive compared to yours. Our military forces are designed for planetary conflicts, not galactic warfare." Zephyr's response came with a projection of star maps that showed the scale of the conflict. The Devourers had consumed nearly a quarter of known galactic civilization, leaving dead zones where entire solar systems had been stripped of all matter and energy. Their expansion followed a predictable pattern. They moved through space like a cosmic wildfire, growing stronger with each world they consumed. "We're not asking you to fight," Zephyr clarified. "Not yet. But there's something humans can do that no other species has been able to accomplish. The Devourers are a hive mind, but they're not truly unified. Their collective consciousness has flaws, gaps that can be exploited by minds that think differently than they do." Sarah felt Zephyr's mental touch and suddenly understood what the alien was proposing. "You want us to study them, to find weaknesses in their psychological structure that other species can't see." "Exactly," Zephyr confirmed. "Human minds work in ways that are unique in the galaxy. Your capacity for individual creativity within cooperative frameworks, your ability to find unexpected solutions to impossible problems. These traits make you potentially valuable in developing new strategies against the Devourers." General Morrison from the Colonial Defense Force leaned forward. "What's the catch? There's always a catch in these situations." Zephyr's expression conveyed what humans might recognize as reluctant admiration. "The catch is that studying the Devourers is extremely dangerous. They consume not just matter and energy, but information itself. Researchers who get too close to understanding their collective consciousness have been known to lose themselves." Their minds become part of the hive, adding to the devourer's knowledge and strength. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was being asked to volunteer for a mission that had already claimed researchers from species far more advanced than themselves. It was both an incredible honor and a potential death sentence. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, Earth's foremost expert on collective intelligence, spoke up. We would need safeguards, ways to study them without direct mental contact. The Confederation has developed some protections, Zephyr acknowledged, but they're not perfect. The volunteers would be isolated from Earth and all human colonies. If they become compromised, they would have to be contained. Sarah watched the faces around the table as everyone processed this information. They were being offered the chance to help save galactic civilization, but at enormous personal risk to whoever volunteered for the mission. It was the kind of choice that defined a species' character. Ambassador Park asked for a recess to allow the human delegation to discuss their response privately. As the various representatives huddled in small groups, Sarah found herself alone with Zephyr for the first time in days. You knew this was coming, she said, not accusingly but with the understanding that came from their deep mental connection. The Harmony Council didn't just want to test our character. They wanted to see if we would volunteer for something this dangerous. Zephyr's response carried layers of emotion that the translation device couldn't fully capture. I argued against it. I told them that asking humans to risk their minds after just learning of the galaxy's existence was unfair. But the situation is desperate, Sarah. The Devourers are accelerating their expansion, and conventional weapons have proven useless against them. Through their telepathic link, Sarah felt Zephyr's genuine anguish over the choice being forced on humanity. The Salathi had grown genuinely fond of humans during their time together, and the idea of putting them in danger was deeply troubling to Zephyr's nature. How many researchers have been lost? Sarah asked. 47. Zephyr replied quietly. From 12 different species, some of the galaxy's most brilliant minds, consumed by the very thing they were trying to understand. Sarah absorbed this, soberly, then asked the question that had been growing in her mind. You need volunteers, don't you? People willing to risk their sanity to find a way to stop these things. We do, Zephyr confirmed. But I won't ask you to do this, Sarah. You've already done more than enough by saving my life and facilitating first contact. No one would expect you to risk yourself further. Sarah looked out the conference room window at the red Martian landscape, where this extraordinary journey had begun. Just weeks ago, her biggest concern had been analyzing rock samples and filing routine reports. Now she was helping to determine humanity's role in a galactic war that could determine the fate of countless civilizations. I'll do it, she said quietly. Zephyr's shock was immediate and overwhelming, transmitted directly through their mental link. Sarah, no. You don't understand what you're saying. The risk— I understand perfectly, Sarah interrupted. You saved me first, you know. Before I found you, I was alone on this station, going through the motions of research that felt increasingly meaningless. Finding you, learning about the galaxy, discovering that there's so much more to existence than just our small corner of space. That gave my life purpose. She turned to face Zephyr directly, her decision crystallizing as she spoke. Besides, I'm probably the best qualified human for this mission. I have experience with telepathic contact. I understand alien psychology better than most humans ever will, and I have the scientific background to approach the problem methodically. Zephyr's distress was palpable, but Sarah also felt something else through their connection, a deep pride and admiration for her decision. The Salathi understood sacrifice in ways that humans were only beginning to comprehend, and they recognized the courage required to volunteer for such a mission. When the formal session resumed, Sarah stood to address the assembly. I volunteer to join the research mission, she announced, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was committing to. I believe humans have an obligation to help in any way we can, and this appears to be the most valuable contribution we can make. The reaction was immediate. Several delegates began speaking at once, some trying to talk her out of the decision, others questioning whether one volunteer was sufficient. Ambassador Park called for order and asked Sarah to explain her reasoning. Zephyr saved my life by trusting me with knowledge of the galaxy, Sarah said. Now it's my turn to trust in that larger purpose. If human minds really do work differently, enough to find weaknesses in the devourer consciousness, then we owe it to every sentient being in the galaxy to try. General Morrison stood up. Dr. Chen, I have to protest. You're a civilian researcher, not a military specialist. If we're going to commit to this mission, it should be someone with appropriate training. With respect, General, Sarah replied. Appropriate training doesn't exist for this situation. What we need is someone who can think creatively about utterly alien psychology, while maintaining enough scientific objectivity to document their findings. My background in geological research has taught me to analyze complex systems, and my experience with Zephyr has given me insight into non-human intelligence. The debate that followed lasted for hours, but Sarah's decision had all read. The research facility orbiting the dead world of Kepler 442c was unlike anything Sarah had ever imagined. Built by the Confederation's greatest engineering minds, it existed in the boundary zone between normal space and the consumed regions where the Devourers held dominion. From her laboratory window, she could see the horrifying beauty of a galaxy being systematically destroyed. 3 months had passed since leaving Mars, and Sarah had undergone intensive preparation for her mission. The Confederation's best xenopsychologists had trained her in mental defense techniques, while their technology specialists had equipped her with safeguards designed to protect her consciousness from devourer influence. The preparation was thorough, but everyone acknowledged that much of what lay ahead was uncharted territory. Zephyr had insisted on accompanying the mission, despite the obvious dangers to a telepathic species. The Salathi's natural mental abilities made them extremely vulnerable to devourer influence, but Zephyr's bond with Sarah provided unique insights that the research team couldn't afford to lose. Together, they formed the core of a research group that included specialists from 7 different species. Today we begin active observation, announced Dr. Vex High, the mission's lead researcher. The crystalline being's translated voice carried harmonics that suggested both excitement and deep apprehension. Our probes have located a Devourer scout formation approximately 2 light hours away. This will be our first opportunity to study their collective consciousness under controlled conditions. Sarah checked her mental defenses one final time, running through the meditation techniques that were supposed to protect her mind from external influence. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was using alien mental disciplines to study alien minds in order to save alien civilizations. Her journey from geological researcher to galactic defender still felt surreal. The observation chamber was heavily shielded, both physically and psychically. Multiple layers of exotic matter and psionic barriers isolated the research team from direct contact with the Devourers, while advanced sensors provided detailed information about their targets. The setup was impressive, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were studying something that was simultaneously studying them. The first images of living Devourers were both fascinating and terrifying. They appeared as writhing masses of dark energy contained within geometric frameworks that constantly shifted and reconfigured. Each individual unit was roughly the size of a starship, but they moved together with perfect coordination, like cells in a massive organism. The collective consciousness is evident in their movement patterns, Dr. Vexahai observed, manipulating holographic displays that showed the Devourer's formation. No individual decision-making, no hesitation or uncertainty. Every action serves the collective's goals with absolute efficiency. Sarah studied the patterns with growing unease. It's too perfect, she said. In human psychology, we know that perfect cooperation usually masks underlying tension or suppressed individuality. But I'm not seeing any signs of internal conflict here. Through her mental link with Zephyr, she felt the Salathi's agreement. The Devourers moved with a harmony that even the most advanced civilizations couldn't achieve, suggesting a level of mental integration that was both admirable and horrifying. Begin Phase 2, Dr. Vexai announced. We're going to attempt limited telepathic contact. This was the moment Sarah had been training for. Under carefully controlled conditions, she would try to establish minimal mental contact with the Devourer collective, hoping to understand their psychology without becoming absorbed into their consciousness. The safeguards were extensive. Multiple backup personalities loaded into her neural implants, emergency disconnection protocols, and constant monitoring by the rest of the team. Sarah activated the contact protocol and immediately felt her consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of the research station. For a moment, she experienced the vast emptiness of space as the Devourers did, not as a barrier to be crossed, but as a resource to be harvested. Stars were not distant suns, but concentrated energy waiting to be consumed. Planets were not worlds, but raw materials for the collective's growth. Then she touched the edge of the Devourer consciousness itself, and the experience was overwhelming. It was like trying to drink from a waterfall, an endless cascade of thoughts, memories, and intentions from countless absorbed minds. Sarah felt herself beginning to drown in the collective's vast awareness, her individual identity starting to dissolve. "Pull back." Zephyr's mental voice cut through the chaos, providing an anchor point that allowed Sarah to retreat to the safety of her own mind. The emergency disconnection activated automatically, severing her contact with the Devourers and leaving her gasping in her restraint chair. "What did you see?" Dr. Vexhai asked urgently. Sarah struggled to find words for the experience. "They're not evil," she said finally. "That's what's so terrifying about them. From their perspective, what they're doing is necessary. They believe they're saving the universe from entropy by organizing all matter and energy into their collective consciousness." She paused, still processing the alien memories she had briefly shared. "They've absorbed thousands of species and they remember all of them. Every civilization they've consumed, every individual mind they've integrated, it's all still there, serving the collective's goals. They genuinely believe they're preserving these cultures by making them part of something greater." The implications were staggering. The Devourers weren't mindless destroyers or cosmic predators. They were idealistic in their own terrifying way, convinced that their actions were ultimately beneficial to the universe. Fighting them wasn't just a matter of superior technology or clever tactics. It required challenging a fundamental, philosophical worldview that had been reinforced by millennia of success. Over the following weeks, Sarah made repeated contact with the Devourer consciousness, each time learning more about their collective psychology. The sessions were grueling, requiring all of her mental defenses to maintain her individual identity while absorbing information from an alien mind that was vast beyond comprehension. She discovered that the Devourers had once been a dying civilization, facing extinction from the heat death of their universe. Their solution had been to merge all conscious minds into a collective that could survive the end of everything by becoming everything. What had started as a desperate survival strategy had evolved into a cosmic mission to impose order on chaos. The breakthrough came during her 7th contact session. While exploring the absorbed memories of a recently consumed species, Sarah noticed something that the collective consciousness seemed to ignore: fragments of individual personality that persisted even after integration. The Devourers believed they were preserving other cultures, but they were actually suppressing the very diversity that made those cultures valuable. "They have a blind spot," Sarah explained to the research team after the session. "The collective consciousness is so focused on unity and efficiency that it can't recognize the value of individual variation. Every absorbed mind is forced to conform to the collective's goals, which means they're actually destroying the very thing they claim to be preserving." Dr. Vexhai's crystalline structure flashed with excitement. "If we could exploit that blind spot, make them aware of the contradiction in their philosophy, it might not stop them," Sarah said, "but it could create internal conflict within the collective. Doubt where there was once certainty. That might be enough to slow their expansion and give the Confederation time to develop better defenses." The plan that emerged was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of fighting the Devourers directly, they would introduce information that challenged the collective's fundamental assumptions about their mission. Sarah would serve as the delivery mechanism, using her established contact protocols to plant philosophical doubts in the Devourer consciousness. The risk was enormous. If the collective detected the deception, they would likely absorb Sarah's mind as punishment for the attempt. Even if the plan succeeded, the psychological stress of deliberately destabilizing a cosmic consciousness might destroy her sanity. But the potential reward, buying time for the galaxy's defenders to regroup, made the risk worthwhile. Zephyr was opposed to the plan from the beginning. "You've already risked enough," the Salathi argued through their mental link. "Let someone else carry out the implementation." "It has to be me," Sarah replied. I'm the only one who's established a stable contact protocol with them. Anyone else would be detected and absorbed before they could deliver the payload. As Sarah prepared for what might be her final mission, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. It had all started with a simple act of compassion, helping an injured being who had crashed near her research station. That choice had led to first contact, galactic diplomacy, and now a desperate gambit to save civilization itself. The preparation for the final contact session took 2 days. Sarah underwent intensive mental conditioning to ensure that the philosophical virus she would carry could remain hidden until the crucial moment. The concept was elegant, a logical proof that the Devourer's actions contradicted their stated goals, disguised as innocent curiosity about their motivations. The moment Sarah released the philosophical virus into the Devourer collective consciousness, the universe seemed to hold its breath. For several seconds, nothing happened. The vast alien mind continued its relentless processing of absorbed knowledge, showing no sign that anything had changed. Then, like a stone thrown into still water, ripples of confusion began to spread through the collective awareness. Sarah felt the moment when the Devourers first encountered the logical contradiction she had planted. The collective consciousness, which had operated with absolute certainty for millennia, suddenly faced a question it couldn't answer. If preserving cultures was their goal, why did they destroy the very diversity that made each culture unique? The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. Across the galaxy, Devourer fleets suddenly stopped their advance as the collective mind grappled with this fundamental challenge to their worldview. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination for thousands of years began to exhibit hesitation, uncertainty, and for the first time in their existence, doubt. Sarah maintained her connection to the collective, watching in fascination as the virus spread through their shared consciousness. Every absorbed mind that had retained some fragment of individual personality suddenly became a source of internal conflict. The memories of destroyed worlds and extinct species, previously justified as necessary sacrifices for the greater good, now seemed like evidence of failure rather than success. "It's working," she transmitted to the research team through her neural link. "The collective is fragmenting. They're experiencing something they've never felt before, regret." But the Devourers were not defenseless against psychological attack. As soon as they identified the source of the disruption, countermeasures began to activate. Sarah felt her mental defenses coming under assault as the collective tried to absorb her consciousness and neutralize the threat she represented. "Sarah, you need to disconnect now." Zephyr's voice cut through the chaos, but Sarah knew it was too late. The virus had taken hold, but she was now trapped within the collective consciousness as they tried to understand and contain the damage she had caused. What followed was a battle unlike anything in galactic history, not a conflict of weapons or ships, but a war of ideas fought within the shared mind of a cosmic entity. Sarah found herself defending not just her own consciousness, but the fundamental human concepts of individual worth, cultural diversity, and the right to choose one's own destiny. The absorbed minds within the collective began to awaken, their suppressed personalities reasserting themselves as the philosophical virus spread. Sarah felt their voices joining hers. Thousands of species that had been consumed by the Devourers, their cultures preserved, but their souls enslaved. Now, for the first time since their absorption, they were remembering what they had lost. The collective consciousness began to fracture along species lines as absorbed civilizations rediscovered their individual identities. The Zefte, master architects who had built cities that sang with the wind. The Mordun, warriors who had valued honor above survival. The Kelleri, artists whose sculptures could capture the essence of emotions in crystalline form. All of them had been forced to abandon their uniqueness in service to the collective's goal of universal unity. Sarah felt herself weakening as the battle raged within the shared mind. The strain of maintaining her individual consciousness while surrounded by the vast alien intelligence was enormous, and she knew she couldn't hold out much longer. But the virus was spreading faster than the Devourers could contain it, and the damage to their unity was becoming irreversible. "I'm losing cohesion," she transmitted desperately. "The virus is working, but I don't think I can get out of here." Zephyr's response came not just as words, but as a flood of memories and emotions. Their first meeting in the crashed ship, the trust they had built during Sarah's recovery efforts, and the friendship that had bridged the gap between species. "You're not alone in there, Sarah. Every mind you've helped awaken is fighting beside you." It was true. Sarah could feel the support of countless absorbed consciousnesses as they rallied to protect the human who had given them back their individuality. The collective's attempt to absorb her was being resisted not just by her own defenses, but by an alliance of awakened minds that refused to let their liberator be consumed. The turning point came when the collective consciousness attempted to purge the infected memories by destroying the absorbed minds that carried the virus. But doing so would mean abandoning their claim to be preserving other cultures. It would prove that their true goal was domination rather than salvation. The logical contradiction became impossible to ignore, and the collective's certainty finally shattered completely. Across the galaxy, devourer fleets began to break apart as different absorbed species reasserted their independence. Some ships maintained their allegiance to the collective's original mission, but others broke away to pursue their own agendas for the first time in millennia. The monolithic force that had threatened to consume the entire galaxy had become a fractured alliance of competing interests. Sarah felt the moment when the collective's hold on her consciousness finally loosened. The devourers, faced with the collapse of their unity, had withdrawn into themselves to deal with the internal crisis. She was free to return to her own mind, but the experience had changed her fundamentally. She carried within her memory fragments from dozens of absorbed species, a living library of cosmic diversity that the collective had tried to suppress. The emergency disconnection finally activated, pulling Sarah back to the safety of the research station. She collapsed in her restraint chair, her body shaking from the strain of the prolonged mental contact. But she was alive, and more importantly, she had succeeded in her mission. "Status report from the observation posts," Dr. Vexhai announced, his crystalline form flickering with excitement. "Devourer activity has ceased across 17 sectors. Their fleets are breaking formation, and some are actually retreating from previously occupied systems." The celebration was tempered by the realization that the threat wasn't completely eliminated. The Devourers still controlled vast regions of space, and some factions within their fractured collective might prove even more dangerous than the original unified force. But for the first time in generations, the galaxy's defenders had hoped that the tide could be turned. Recovery took weeks, during which Sarah underwent extensive medical and psychological evaluation to ensure that her contact with the collective hadn't caused permanent damage. The experience had left her with enhanced telepathic abilities and memories from dozens of alien species, but her core personality remained intact. She had touched the mind of a cosmic entity and returned to tell the tale. The aftermath of the mission transformed galactic politics overnight. The Confederation, emboldened by their success against the Devourers, began planning liberation campaigns to free the absorbed species that were reasserting their independence. Humanity was formally welcomed as a full member of the galactic community, with Sarah serving as their first ambassador. The small research station on Mars where everything had begun was designated as a historical site, commemorating the moment when human compassion had opened the door to the stars. A monument was erected near the location where Sarah had first found Zephyr's crashed ship, bearing inscriptions in dozens of languages that told the story of how one human's act of kindness had changed the fate of the galaxy. Years later, as Sarah stood in the council chambers of the Galactic Confederation, she often thought about that morning when she had noticed unusual seismic readings and decided to investigate. The choice to help an injured alien had led to first contact, galactic war, and ultimately the liberation of countless enslaved minds. It was a reminder that the most important decisions often seemed small at the time, their true significance only becoming clear in retrospect. Zephyr, now serving as the Salathi representative to the Confederation Council, remained Sarah's closest friend and frequent collaborator. Their telepathic bond had deepened through shared experiences, creating a partnership that bridged not just species, but entire ways of thinking. Together, they worked to integrate the newly liberated species into the galactic community, helping them rebuild their cultures while learning from their unique perspectives. The Devourers remained a threat, but they were no longer the unstoppable force they had once been. The philosophical virus Sarah had introduced continued to spread through their collective consciousness, creating new factions and internal conflicts that prevented them from mounting coordinated attacks. Some devourer groups even began experimenting with cooperation rather than consumption, suggesting that even cosmic entities could learn and grow. As Sarah prepared for another diplomatic mission to contact a newly discovered species on the galactic rim, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from geological researcher to galactic ambassador. It had all started with a simple principle her parents had taught her as a child. When you see someone who needs help, you help them, regardless of who they are or what it might cost you. That principle had guided her from the red sands of Mars to the council chambers of galactic civilization, and it would continue to guide her as humanity took its place among the stars.